almost every news article that was covering that came away saying RFK and FDA is banning artificial food dyes. Rewind to that conversation that was actually happening. He was talking about, wouldn't it be great if, these food companies would just get on board and do this? It's voluntary. There was no regulation, but everybody's covering it as a ban. How are we not, putting together the pieces that RFK is just saying things and hoping
he can manifest it.
Right.
Basically. It's like a vision board he has for food dyes.
Because it's hard to be a person with a body these days. When bonkers TikTok diet.
You're listening to Burnt Toast. I'm Virginia Soul-Smith. Today my conversation is with Jessica Wilson. Jessica is a clinical dietitian and a host of the Making It Awkward podcast. Her critiques of American food hysteria have been featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, Slate, Bustle, on public radio shows, and ABC Primetime News. Jessica's ultra-processed food experiment, where she lived on ultra-processed food, received coverage in Time magazine last fall and received attention from conspiratory wellness doctor Mark Hyman. In her book, It's Always Been Ours, Jessica focuses on the ways that marginalized bodies, especially Black women's bodies, are policed by society in ways that impact body autonomy and health. Jessica is one of the most incisive thinkers I know about wellness and diet culture, as well as about food policy, nutrition, all the things. So I asked her to come back on the podcast today just to help us make sense of what is happening right now in public health. We're going to get into RFK, we're going to get into MAHA, we're going to get into processed foods. I know you will find this conversation both hilarious and helpful. As a reminder, you can take 10% off Jessica's book, It's Always Been Ours, if you order it from my local independent bookstore, Split Rock Books, along with a copy of Fat Talk, or if you've ordered Fat Talk from them before. Just click the link in your episode description and use the code FATTALK at checkout. Now here's Jessica. You were on the podcast back in 2023 to talk about your fantastic book, which I continue to recommend to folks all the time. It was called It's Always Been Ours, Rewriting the Story of Black Women's Bodies. And since then, you have been very busy. So tell us what you're working on these days. What are you up to?
2023 was a blur, so I'm not counting.
No.
That year doesn't count. 2024, I started doing a lot more listening to people in places of influence and power. I ended up at a few conferences and noticed that I really enjoyed having people say the quiet part out loud. So with that, I was like, maybe this could be a podcast where I get people just to say the things that they were thinking on the inside. And so that's been great. And it's worked. In the debut of Making It Awkward just happened to coincide with Dr. Chris Van Teleken's book release, Ultra Processed People, which really released a hysteria about ultra processed foods. I thought it was very dramatic and silly. So I was like, what can I do to have this conversation be less chaotic and actually, more truth-telling? And what are we actually supposed to learn from this? So I decided to repeat his 30-day experiment where he ate ultra-processed foods for 30 days, which from the photos and pictures, it looked like he was eating at McDonald's for 30 days for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I was like, that's not how people live.
That's not how people live.
No, like Trader Joe's.
Also, we had Supersize Me. What?
I know.
And now we're in this moment of the rise of Make America Healthy Again, My Buddy RFK. There's a lot going on right now that is fairly terrible. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing. So did MAHA feed into the processed food phobia, or did the fear-mongering around processed foods beget us this current moment? Like, how do you see that all playing out? Because they're very intertwined.
Right. And so I think separating them is impossible. What I think was happening that made all of these things connect is that we had particularly women, baking bread at the beginning of COVID. Like, we were just going to explore all these lovely things. And then somehow that tipped over into trad wives, right?
Yes, because people were home in lockdown.
Right.
Doing all the domestic things.
Right.
And the communities that were already sort of entrenched in homeschooling.
Yes.
Yes.
We're like, look at us on TikTok. So dread waves became trending and people became obsessed. And, I too was looking at the milkmaid mom of it all. That was happening at the same time vaccines were being required to get back into spaces and for the world to, quote, open up again. And so we have bread baking, trad wives, and moms who were really concerned about vaccines. And I honestly think it was also just a power play at the time and, performative existence to say that we don't want our kids vaccinated. So all of these things, we have food, we have moms, we have vaccines, and then we have somebody who is speaking to all of these things, and that just happens to be RFK.
He sort of threads all these things together, even though his position on these things is like squishy.
Right. Really pulls on his family legacy, fully Democrat. But then all of a sudden, he's not. He was running for president on very, squishy, unclear statements about food, but always very clear he was anti-vax. And then with the suspension of his presidential campaign, the Make America Healthy Again initial super PAC folks were like, we can't let this energy that went to RFK go to waste. So also said at the same time, the Harris campaign didn't take his call, didn't take the call of RFK Jr. So that implies, he could have gone either way.
Yeah, he was like, I'm open to whoever.
Right. I'm looking to be an important person.
Right. Firm moral compass there, choosing between those two.
Right. So, I do give some credit to getting Trump elected from the people who were like, I guess if this is the way we'll get RFK, we'll vote in this direction.
So let's talk about what's happening right now. I mean, we are recording this at the end of April, so folks are going to be listening to this in a couple of weeks. Who knows what else will happen in the month of May. But at the moment, we're really grappling with two issues. So I thought we could kind of take them one at a time.
Sure.
The first one is this war on food dyes, which is obviously coming out of the processed food fear-mongering.
Right.
But specifically now about food dyes and yet also sugar. He kind of always lumps them together.
Isn't that interesting? So back in January, red dye number 3 was on the chopping block for the FDA. And I think it was kind of viewed as like a test case for how engaged the public will be. And so at that time, there were influencers, Jillian Michaels, Mark Hyman, Vani Hari, and all of the people who, FYI, have their supplement line and fully unregulated supplements that they're sharing, but are very invested in this red dye conversation. And I'm like, why is this the thing? And I'm like, it's so easy. It's so simple for people to understand. Red dye number 3. So I feel like that was the, let's see how angry, or on board we can get the public to be. So then last week, as of this recording, RFK has his news conference where he's talking about artificial dyes. And, these are bad because they're petroleum-based dyes. And almost every news article that was covering that came away saying RFK and FDA is banning artificial food dyes. Rewind to that conversation that was actually happening. He was talking about, wouldn't it be great if, these food companies would just get on board and do this? It's voluntary. There was no regulation, but everybody's covering it as a ban. How are we not, putting together the pieces that RFK is just saying things and hoping
he can manifest it?
Right.
It's like a vision board he has for food dyes.
So, these food companies are going to be our friends.
Can we back up for a second, too, and say, what is his concern about food dyes and how valid that is?
So I actually don't have a clear vision for what he thinks is the problem, other than it's just like a literally shiny, bright.
Right.
We were worried about petroleum. We could talk about asthma. We can talk about the oil and gas industry. There's so many things that we could actually talk about if we were concerned about petroleum. But
for that to be the one petrochemical we've just to focus on.
And how much of it are we eating? And especially with the red dye number 3, when they were looking at potential for cancer causing. It was in rat models where rats were fed a giant amount of red dye. There's also been some connections, especially in parents, between behavioral problems and certain dyes. The research out there, per the FDA, as far as the food dyes being regulated, has said that there is some science, but it's not clear. So let's continue to monitor. And I definitely will not discount anybody's personal experience, yes, with those food dyes. And does that make something bannable, or that we should ban it? Or does it mean that people could look at the labels of food?
Right.
So to pick up on that as the primary thing that is causing cancer for kids and making them unhealthy is wild.
Yeah, it's a big leap. It's a big leap from a little bit of data that's pretty unclear to let's ban this and let's celebrate this as RFK getting the job done. And then he went on the whole sugar is poison rant. Right. Both those focuses of his feel very anti-fat to me. There's definitely a lot of diet culture coding throughout that.
I was noting in a lot of the MAHA rhetoric and even in those confirmation hearings, the phrase childhood obesity, and we'll put that in quotes for sure, isn't said as much as I feel like it was, say, in Obama administration and even like Biden and, by grants and nonprofits. Like that was always their scary thing that we want to protect kids from. Like, this is awful. Right. And now it's, chronic disease. And of course, that includes obesity, but it's different words. If people don't know what he is referencing, I'm wondering if it just sounds better.
Yeah, I'm interested that they're talking less directly about a war on obesity than previous administrations. I think part of it is the focus on autism is really that's his epidemic that he's fixated on. I'm wondering if he's trying to avoid the Ozempic conversation because his position on Ozempic has been complicated. He was like, we need to lose weight the old-fashioned way. Americans just need healthy food 3 meals a day, and that's all it'll take, which, sure, that's exactly how that works. But the drug manufacturers are extremely powerful, and he can't actually, in his position now, say that he doesn't think Ozempic's a good idea. So, since he's not going to say Americans shouldn't be losing weight, he's not going to criticize the goal of losing weight. Obviously, he's pro that. I don't think he wants to be as pro Ozempic as others in the administration probably are and want him to be. So I'm wondering if he's stepping back there to not have that. I don't know. This is speculation.
Right. Which is often all we have, because who actually knows what's going on in the brain that formerly had a worm in it?
Yes. Yes, it's very unclear. In the brain of a man known for carrying dead animal carcasses weird distances. The autism stuff, really, I have to say, just personally makes my blood boil.
Yeah.
It's so offensive. And yet he's framing it again out of this concern for children and the moms are so concerned about the kids. And I'm just as a mom, I'm wow, you don't represent me at all. Please stop talking.
He talks about autism as also a preventative disease. And if it's new now, it's got to be something in the environment, is what he has said over and over again. So we're going to figure out what that thing is in the environment. When I've heard his podcasts, he'll talk about how nobody had autism.
He just never met anyone.
No.
He also didn't know fat people back then.
Oh, right. And nobody with chronic diseases.
No.
And nobody with, mental health concerns, especially in his family.
Yeah, not in his own family.
Not at all. But here we are.
I mean, I do believe that there was never a fat Kennedy because I don't think they let you be a fat Kennedy between the drug issues and the eating disorders there.
Many people have pointed out the increase in screenings among folks of color, among women, just awareness and how, all of these things contributed to the improved awareness of autism, which is great. And yes, his understanding of statistics, again, unsmart, we'll say. So he doesn't understand that. And the need to find an environmental concern harkens back to his initial environmental justice that has just gone by the wayside and puts into question any and all of that research. But yes, the most recent statements, all while Love on the Spectrum is trending, on Netflix.
Interesting.
Right. Is that folks with autism will not, fall in love. They don't pay taxes. One that people have not been repeating is that they won't get to play baseball, basically creating an underclass of, folks with autism and otherwise. And I'm like, sir, do you know how many neurodivergent people are athletes? And that's what makes them good. But anyhow, even in the conversations about how wrong he is, like we lose that every individual, regardless of level of support needs with autism, are deserving. So all of the arguments were like, oh, people with autism pay taxes. I think we get away from, there are some who are participating in capitalism and, that's majority people. I'm like, regardless, let's not play into that.
Yeah. And let's not value people purely by their economic contributions.
Right.
That's a weird way of determining our humanity. Really depressing.
I feel like his draw to autism started with the vaccines of it all. I feel like maybe that was his intro because the convergence of both his anti-vax and anti-science and pro-Jenny McCarthy autism is caused by vaccines has taken on a life of its own because it's, transcended vaccine to now something in our environment. Is it something in our food? So where he gets the ball rolling and how things snowball is a mystery.
Well, I think it's not just him. I mean, I think that's the wellness culture, diet culture lens of all of this in a way. Because that's what we're trained to do, right? If there's so many health conditions where you're like, well, if I just cut out gluten, it will fix it. Oh, well, the gluten didn't fix it, so probably it's the dairy. So probably it's the this. So probably, well, maybe I just need to cut it all out. He's elimination dieting always with every issue he works on. That's how it feels to me. And I think that is a pattern that we know really well because we've all done it. We've been trained as good little foot soldiers of the wellness industrial complex to do that. And so people are like, oh, yeah. Okay, so maybe it's not the vaccines. I mean, I'm not totally convinced it probably is a little bit the vaccines, but okay, let's look at these other things. And we never quite let go of the first conspiracy theory, even though I mean, as a journalist, I have been writing pieces to debunk the autism vaccine myth since my career began over 20 years ago. But there's still people clinging to that one, but then adding on, well, it's probably the sugar, it's probably the food dyes, it's probably the gluten, it's probably this.
Yeah.
It's probably some other chemical in the environment. And I just think that's the mindset we all have, we've been trained to have about health.
That's a great point. Mark Hyman is one of the people who says gluten causes autism.
Yes. He's been selling this stuff forever. And I think what I find really enraging about it is how it preys on parents. It creates this divisiveness among parents too, right? Of course you're worried for your kid. You're trying to advocate for your kid and you can waste time down these RFK rabbit holes. And I see this all the time in my audience, moms who are like, oh, well, they can't have the snack foods because we're managing this behavioral issue. And so much effort and energy being expended on controlling exposure to something that has nothing to do with what your child's struggling with and isn't going to make a difference.
I'm on Facebook 0.001% of the time. And every time I open it, it'll be I healed my child's autism this way. It'll be 1 billion food things that I did differently. And also I provided structure and sleep, which is very important.
I both feel frustrated with these parents and I feel for these parents because they're navigating something really difficult without support, but also just the ableism of this whole idea that you need to cure it is just revolting to me.
Or prevent it. And we have not prevented it and people have been, okay, what is happening? This is not new, friend. Yeah. Yes, you just used to treat it with corporal punishment and abuse. And so that's not happening now.
Which is progress, which is why we can stop hearkening back to this beautiful mythical past that he wants us all to live in. Yeah.
Right. Yes. When things were great.
The other piece that keeps enraging me is, and again, I realize I'm really going for the moms here, but the MAHA moms keep saying things like, oh, I feel so much safer now. My child will be safe now. And Zen Honeycutt, who's one of their, big out there leaders told her followers, pretty soon we won't even need healthcare because having RFK in this job.
Right.
I mean, the disconnect of these like privileged white moms saying they feel like their child is so much safer now in an administration that is making everybody else's child so much less safe.
Right.
That's deporting 4-year-olds, but okay.
The idea that we won't have healthcare or need healthcare anymore is something that I don't understand, because in his past, people needed healthcare. You know what they needed it for? Measles. And so now that everybody's going to have infectious diseases,
we are going to need some healthcare.
Yeah, we're going to need healthcare that's not vitamin A and cod liver oil for measles. So in a bunch of other things, including, cancer, heart disease, and all of these things, like, you're making us need healthcare probably more.
Yeah, and just the narrow worldview of like, this feels better for my child, so therefore it must be better.
It's like, how are you convinced that this is better for your kid? It is wild. I don't know.
I know, it's dark. What else is on your mind right now as you're watching all of this? Like, what else do we need to hit on?
Speaking of moms, I will always talk about pronatalism, but there has been the headline, Elon wants us to have more babies. Like, that is a proper headline.
My ovaries shriveled up and died when I read it. I can imagine nothing less sexy.
Yeah. No.
Than Elon wanting, no, done, out.
No, thank you. And at the same time, right, cutting so many services and support and, ways to feed children away. But it's about eugenics and having, more white babies. I don't understand where the obsession is with creating these like beautiful, white, brilliant children. They will say because the economy is crashing or the environment or something. But I'm like, no, you are deporting, Black and brown people. You need people to uphold your economy. So what you're doing is trying to fill in those gaps. You've deported every farm worker. So do you want to create more babies in order to do the labor of folks? It is confusing to me.
It's very confusing. And, this is the same political party and political system that fearmongered about welfare queens for decades. Women having babies was like the worst idea. Only Black, poor women having babies. Like this idea that some women have babies just to like abuse the system.
Right.
Which didn't ever exist. But there's not enough resources in the system to make that remotely profitable. But the idea that some women are just like gaming the system, having all these babies, but now we want to create these super powered white embryos.
Yeah.
And we want white women to have as many babies as possible.
Absolutely.
God, it's
There's
chilling.
been mention of scholarships, academic scholarships that will only go to women who are mothers or who will have babies. I've heard suggestions that we have better sex education. So people
menstrual cycle tracking. That's not at all creepy in an administration that also wants to take away abortion rights. That really blew me away because it's this panel of men being like, women need classes on how to track their menstrual cycles. And I think we all learn it at like 11,
right.
Sir. Like, women are not confused about what our menstrual cycles are doing.
So maybe you want me to know where my ovulation is in my cycle? Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in these apps that you're already trying to steal our data from.
I mean, men are deeply confused by menstruation, for sure. They don't understand that cycle. But women have had this knowledge for centuries. Like, we've got midwives. We've figured this out.
So, I just keep trying to put together all of these things. More babies, more unvaccinated babies, people being able to buy their way into this ideal version of health, which again is that healthy, organic, whole foods. And then poor kids who need school lunches, just getting funding cut from that.
Well, it is a terrifying time in so many ways. I am grateful to you for helping walk us through some of it and bring a little clarity and humor to a very dark moment. So to end on a cheerier note, so what is something that is butter on your toast right now?
I say that sewing has gotten back into my life. So I can't say I recommend it to everyone, but it is fully detached me from social media and everything because my hands are busy all the time. I'm not picking up a phone. I can't even hear it because my sewing machine is going. I 10 out of 10 regret buying an overalls pattern because of the 1 billion pieces, but it's actually doing what I need it to do.
Oh, overalls seem very challenging to make.
10 out of 10 do not recommend.
Yeah. I'm miserable, but in a good way.
Fully distracted from the state of the world. So that's good.
That is great. I mean, any kind of absorbing, that's how I feel about my garden. Like, it gets me outside, off my phone.
Yeah.
And yes, I would rather wrestle weeds and dig holes in very rocky soil and do all of that than be in the world often. So that's a great better. Mine, I figured since in honor of you being here, I should shout out one of my favorite ultra-processed foods.
Excellent.
That makes my life so great right now, which is we're on a real kick with frozen chicken tenders. Like, I just feel like they are a real unsung staple of eating.
Agree.
That more people need to be talking about. Like, I make them because I have one kid who, like, that is, like, the food she will eat, like, that is their food. So I make them a bunch. But I've realized they are so versatile. Like, I can make them into tacos. I can put them on salad.
Yep.
They are good in a pasta with, like, a creamy sauce. They add the right crunch. There's a lot you can do with frozen chicken tenders, and they are ready so fast and delicious.
You can walk around the house eating one, which, I've done many a time because, there's a few bites and you can make a, full circle around your house while doing it.
Totally. I'm just like, where would dinner be at my house without chicken tenders? So, that's my better this week. Well, Jessica, thank you again for being here. Tell folks where we can find you, how we can support your work.
Thank you. I'm on Instagram at jessicawilson.msrd. My podcast is Making It Awkward. It comes out weekly. And let me tell you, it does get fun sometimes. I did have Jeff Hutt, the Make America Healthy Again spokesperson on, I think, before he knew he wasn't supposed to say things out loud. So that's always good. You could find me in my gardening. You can find me at my website, jessicawilsonmsrd.com. You can find me in the clinic. That's something else I've been up to lately. I'm working at a queer and trans health clinic. So
amazing.
Yeah, and in a teeny tiny private practice.
Love it.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Burnt Toast. If you'd like to support the show, please subscribe for free in your podcast player and tell a friend about the episode. And leave us a rating or review. Just scroll down in the podcast player you're listening to until you see a place to tap some stars and leave a little comment. We like 5 stars, please, and lots of butter. You can also consider a paid subscription to the Burnt Toast newsletter. It's just $7 a month. It gets you behind all of our paywalls, and it really helps us make the show. Click the link in your episode description or go to virginiasoulsmith.substack.com. The Burnt Toast podcast is produced and hosted by me, Virginia Soul Smith, and Corinne Fay. You can follow me on Instagram at @V_Soulsmith. You can follow Corinne at Celltrade Plus, an Instagram account where you can buy and sell plus-size clothing, and subscribe to Corinne's newsletter, Big Undies, at bigundies.substack.com. The Burnt Toast logo is by Deanna Lowe, our theme music is by Faraday, and Tommy Heron is our audio engineer. Thanks for listening and supporting anti-diet, body liberation journalism.